Welcome to America's
Podcast.
I'm your host, Austin and
Ray. I am super excited to drop this week's episode for you guys with Caliva. This is the first dispensary that Austin and I went to after moving to California, and we get to sit down with Mike Vu, VP of Labs.
He deals a lot with the science behind the cultivation and extraction teams, which means he has a lot of fun, expensive toys.
And the labs are just one part of their day-to-day operations at Caliva that we dive into. There is so much more that goes on. They do everything from seed to sale, and they also have every single license that you can obtain in California.
We had the exclusive privilege to go to Caliva and sit at their headquarters in their conference room, which was unique because their building also includes the dispensary, storefront, and the whole entire grow operation under one roof. Excuse the background noise from time to time.
And in this episode, we talk a lot about the different growing pains that the industry is having with the 2018 laws and regulations, and how Caliva is on top of their game as far as compliance.
We delve into pesticide, microtoxin, and heavy metals testing. Of course, I'm the science guy, so I loved hearing about that.
And Caliva's been working really hard in their product and development. They have some really cool new products they're going to be dropping, and we talked to Mike about some of his favorite extraction methods, which plays into that new product.
Yeah, we might tell you about it. So as Ray said, she loves the business aspect of it. We talk about Caliva and what it looks like for them in the near future and their long-term goals.
Mike studied molecular biology and biochemistry at UC Davis here in California. So it was really cool to sit down with such an intelligent scientist and ask him how his experience was taking that leap of faith into the cannabis industry. And here's the episode. Yeah, so kind of to open it up, we're at Caliva on 7th Street. It's a 10,000 square foot marijuana facility. They actually have, isn't it 10,000 square feet?
Times 10, 100,000 square feet.
100,000 square feet.
It is the largest vertically integrated dispensary in the nation, right?
Hey, if you validate that, that's awesome. That's as far as I know, right?
Okay, yeah.
And we're talking to Mike Vu. He is the VP of Labs here at Caliva. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but the last 2.5 years you have kind of been focused on building out the labs and the science teams and some of the extraction going on here at Caliva. But of course, you've been involved in other areas of the business. So we just wanted to introduce you and kind of get started in talking a little bit more about what's so great about Caliva.
No, totally. I mean, starting with Caliva about 3 years ago, there's probably 20 of us when we started, and we're about 270 people right now. Definitely wear a lot of hats in the company early on. Mm-hmm. You know, the core focus was really building out that science team,
And what kind of roles are those, like a science team?
So the science team right now, we have an extraction component to it, which is extraction oil refinement. Another component where it's analytical lab chemistry, where you actually do a lot of the analysis from a chemical fingerprint standpoint. And then you also have the component formulations. Even though I'm the VP of science, that doesn't make me the best scientist in the company, right? We have much better scientists than I in the company. Right. The core disciplines there's we have great people who are so experienced with extraction. Those are so good with refinement chemistry, those with analytical chemistry, and the artists behind how to mix that together into a nice formulated product.
Wow.
And it's interesting too because they, probably got their education outside of the cannabis industry, and then they're able to kind of come in here and hit the ground running, and you guys are all able to work together. And
totally, and it's the magical marriage between that science and art that's beautiful with Caliva, right? You have people with those kind of technical discipline backgrounds, but then you also have people who have the more historic cannabis experience mashed together.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right? So, we'll have a PhD scientist that can analyze this strain, give you the terpene profile, the cannabinoid profile. Mm-hmm. But, you may have somebody else who is more versed in the sensory side of it, and you marry the two together.
Wow.
Like, if I can get all these terpenes together and all these cannabinoids together and I smoke it, does it taste like a Blue Dream? Mm-hmm. Does it taste like a super lemon haze? Well, then you have the other part of the actual individual who's been in the space, a cannabis connoisseur who smokes a lot and can really pick out the complex flavors. And then when you get the marriage of those two, that's where magic happens.
Yeah.
Right.
So having the infrastructure be able to do that, and also have the staff and just the team at Caliva to make that happen is what makes Caliva special.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I know when you guys started, you said about how many, and you're up to 270 now.
So
there's a lot of hiring, probably still going on.
It is
Yeah.
a ton of hiring, and we're continually expanding. So we have another facility that we are expanding to. That's going to involve probably another 50% increase in our Caliva staff.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Wow.
So just think, when I started, I want to say it was about 25 people. I was probably employee number 25.
Cool.
Wow.
Over the last 3 years, we've gone to, I think it's 270 right now, and in about 3 more months, I think it's going to probably be around 350, close to 400.
Wow.
So that's just from a head count perspective. You can kind of see what the ramp up looks like. But, it's a very aggressive growth. Our hiring and HR team, kudos to them for being able to hire so much people and onboard so much people in such a compacted time frame.
Well, and what would you say kind of contributes to that growth? I mean, do you think the new regulations and it being recreational now is a big part of that?
Definitely. You have new, business opportunities opening up in cannabis, but also layers of complexity that require more layers of sophistication for a company. So as compliance becomes more and more, figured out and restrictive, you need people to be able to navigate that space. Our lab supervisor recently, she did a webinar on just that whole compliance piece from switching from phase 1 testing to phase 2.
This was what happened July 1st, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. So something that Caliva was prepared for on January 1st, enforcement didn't really seem to kick off until about July 1st when everybody started scrambling.
Right.
So, you have all these companies that were just kind of basking in the grace period and thriving with it, kind of scrambling in the last 2 weeks of June.
And y'all really planned ahead and made sure all your bases were covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Caliva's extra due diligence with our compliance team, highlighting that early on prepared us heavily for that.
That's smart.
So for sure, right? So.
And that's one thing that stood out to me about Caliva was how prepared and how you guys did it right the first time. And I know that that's something that Dennis O'Malley really stressed at the beginning was, let's just be compliant and follow the rules at the beginning. There's so many, of these like illegal delivery services and all this stuff. So it really seems like it benefited in the end getting into these new regulations.
100%. So, our executive leadership team, they're just very keen and aware of the intricacies of that and the value of making sure you're prepared and compliant early on.
Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like you're always looking for the next compliance law so you can be prepared for it because y'all are looking that far down the road. You have to almost in this industry.
Totally. There was a meeting today actually on phase 3 testing with our internal group. So you kind of see phase 3 testing kicks on December 31st of this year, and already, 5 months, 6 months ahead, we're already looking at. Correct.
Smart.
Yeah.
What is in the phase 3? What's because we know the packaging and the compliance laws for phase 2, but what's phase 3 and what does that entitle?
Phase 3 is going to introduce microtoxin testing,
Okay.
as well as heavy metals testing as well.
Cool. Now this is even in flower form, extraction, every single form.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
And this is great for the consumer. I'm sure very costly and
Yeah, I'm sure it's
probably,
super costly
yeah.
for the business, but obviously great for the consumer because they're getting a tested and high quality product for sure. But
Exactly. Safety first, right? I mean, if you have the opportunity to either get cannabis that is phase 2 tested or cannabis that phase 1 tested, they're both compliant under state laws, but one's going to have a higher threshold of requirement than the other.
So I was going to ask you, as far as like compliance, I mean, anything in terms of business, not even compliance, what's been like the biggest bump in the road that Caliva's had, and how did y'all like overcome it?
Bump in the road for Caliva.
or maybe
So-
even just in your role or
Yeah, maybe even in your role or everyday basis, like growing pains, I guess you could say.
Growing pains, all right, good. I mean, there's always that gap between what's compliant and how far above you want to go beyond that, because it's always a shifting landscape on, hey, this is what the regs are going to be, but the reality is, what is going to be enforced, right? So the first 2 years for Clio is a whole battle of that, right? I mean, it's easy to do the right thing when the right thing is listed in front of you,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to do the wrong thing when that's not kind of panned out for you.
And when you had like the freedom per se.
Correct.
And they're
right.
still figuring out so much with cannabis. You just have to be really adaptable.
You do, 100%. I definitely respect the lawmakers for trying to navigate this space. They have everyone's best interest in mind, but there's always going to be that kind of growing pains, to put it right. I mean, talking with regulators early on, they made it really clear that they want to roll things out in a very mindful way without hamstringing all of the producers.
Yeah,
all the producers in the space,
Mm-hmm.
right? So given that, you still don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a regulator coming into the space and you haven't been ingrained in cannabis growing
Or even in
extraction,
any of the day-to-day, you don't know the...
you don't know,
Yep.
right? You don't know what you don't know. So you try to be very bureaucratic and cover all the bases. But then when you actually roll it out, there's going to be blind spots. And then now it's up to like handling a state of 35, 40 million people
Mm-hmm.
with, like thousands of dispensaries and tens of thousands of cultivators. Any kind of regulation you put into play is going to affect all those people and just kind of like ripple out.
Yeah.
That has always been that kind of
It's like a juggling act, really.
Oh yeah.
100%. You got to do it, you got to react to it, and then make sure that any changes that you implement aren't causing so much ripples that you're causing all the producers in the space that's producing good product to just totally be hamstrung, and then there's nothing out there for the medical consumer and also the recreational consumer. Correct.
Well, I was going to say too, I was even just noticing at dispensaries after the regulations, there's not product anywhere on the shelves because they're all waiting in line to get tested. Well, when you come here, it's like you have a whole array of Caliva flower because it's all already done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite nice.
It is, and Caliva definitely, benefited
Mm-hmm.
from July 1st. You're totally right? And, you have 30, 40 different labs that are licensed by the state to test. Ideally, the state needs 100,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? And then all these labs who have varying degrees of technical ability,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to have them all kind of aligned, both in their methodology and also in their equipment. There's a lot of value tied up in this product. And if I send out a batch of 10,000 vape cartridges and the lab that tested it and gave me a COA result, certificate of analysis result that's incorrect, that could be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that has been
Not used efficiently.
not used efficiently, and that could be a loss that's not on me.
Yeah.
Right. A lab technician might have made a mistake somewhere, and then now my 10,000 units of vape cartridges are done.
Yeah.
And the state tracks this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the state is going to if the lab elevates that negative result up, the manufacturer has X amount of tries to pass a product through.
Interesting.
And if there's not alignment in the labs, being able to qualify the material in a very sophisticated way, you will get into situations where lab mistakes can cause manufacturers and producers a ton of product. And with the number of qualified labs, you also have the issue with the backlog, right? That's the issue with waiting until June to get your stuff
Right.
processed.
People should have been doing that ahead of time.
Yeah, and this is not cheap equipment. All these equipment have a set amount of throughput. You can only run X amount of samples per day through this machine, and if all of a sudden your demand has jumped up 10x, 20x, instead of your 10-day turnaround or 5-day turnaround, it's going to be a month turnaround. That almost causes unnecessary pressure onto the labs, where the labs are potentially more prone to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
There's less oversight on those results, and when you get a false positive, that's very harmful. Early on, pre-2018, Caliva did a lot of kind of proficiency testing where we compared multiple labs together at our costs, where we would send duplicate samples out to multiple labs and try to identify which labs are best out there.
Okay.
And I got to give a shout out to Anresco in our proficiency analysis. They were really the best at checking for pesticides. And you have to do that with every single test type, right?
Right.
And big props to Anresco for doing it. And I want to do another assessment with the other labs that are currently out there right now. But they were definitely one of the top ones. And the reason being, they weren't specifically focused in the cannabis space at first.
So they didn't have that preconceived notion of any kind.
Of the supply and demand,
Yep.
pretty much. Wow.
Correct. They are traditionally I believe they do ag testing and food testing.
Oh,
So
wow.
California jumped from, I think, 26 pesticides that were supposed to be tested for phase 1 to 67 pesticides.
Wow.
And Resco's team that we work with, they have a panel up to 250 pesticides.
Wow.
So, I mean, this has been their bread and butter for years. So that's why it shouldn't be a surprise to us that, they stacked ranked well above the other labs when we're doing proficiency analysis. But, that kind of due diligence is needed, right?
Right.
And I still think that if you were to do a scan of all the labs out there right now, you're going to notice discrepancy from labs. And working with some other colleagues in the space that are producing oil as well, this is something they're suffering from.
Right. Especially with all the increased supply that they have right now that they are demanded to get out. I mean, they're definitely more likely to make that failure.
100%.
Yeah,
right?
wow.
And then there's also this little bit of it where when you're trying to get things tested for retail shelves and for distribution, that's one piece. It's for a finished good. But then you have the bulk materials piece that doesn't necessarily need to be tested, right? Because it doesn't make sense to test a batch of oil until it's actually in a vape pen, and then it's no longer going to be tampered. So I totally understand it from that regulatory space. But then now you put a lot of liability on manufacturers because,
Because they get everything done, and then it could get to the end point, and it's not
n-
good, and you
negative,
did all the
yeah.
work leading up to it.
Wow. Yeah.
Totally, right? So if I bought 1 kilo of oil and then I qualified it and then I produced 2,000 vape pens, that's one thing. Maybe that 2,000 vape pens is going to have an inherent cost with it because of the testing requirements with it. And if I wanted to be more efficient with it and spread the costs out, I may want to qualify 5,000, 5,000 grams of oil to make 10,000 cartridges. And then now my $700,000 COA test can now be spread across 10,000 units instead of being spread across 2,000.
Makes sense.
But the risk that you have at that level now is committed X amount of dollars for 5 kilos of oil. And now if that fails, now my whole batch could be potentially going into the disposal.
Yeah. Wow. Into the trash. Now, I thought that Caliva had their own testing on site. It's third party now?
We do. No.
Okay.
So you always need to get third party COA tested. That's one of the things with the state. We have every single license that you can get in the cannabis space in California.
Because you guys are seed to sale.
There's seed to sale. And I believe we have everything except for our lab testing because there's such a conflict of interest. You can't have both. So we test on site. Right, we test on site just like Mars company tests their products on site. We want that upstream visibility before the product gets pushed down.
Smart.
Right, and it helps tremendously on the formulation front too. Right, I mean, if we're trying to formulate a vape to hit a certain spec, we can't wait 5 days for every iteration. The team's going to need to get that tested and turned around immediately so they can add their other flavoring components in there and try to hit those targets.
Wow.
So there's a tremendous amount of value add. Our director of research, Maya, so shout out to Maya too. We're proposing an expansion of our lab, which will include even more expensive equipment.
Which I'm sure you're excited about.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, right?
It's like your new toys.
New toys. You can have, Wolfgang Puck, in the kitchen, but if Wolfgang Puck is only limited to making pizza and only being able to buy ingredients from Safeway, you're very limited in what you can come up with. We're very excited to be able to get approval for new toys.
Cool.
And then new toys just kind of helps us with our process and do more in-process testing.
Okay.
Right? If we had to test everything through a third-party lab,
Takes forever, I'm sure.
Takes forever. I think we kind of mapped it out, what it looked like if we had to test for a lab in every part of the process, and inputting material that comes in and qualifying that until it exits out as a finished good is like 45 days. Wow. Yeah, to do the amount of testing that we want to do with it.
Yeah.
But if we're able to just do it all internally, that collapses that time frame down to a fraction of that, right? Like 10 to 15% of that time. So that's super important, and really glad Caliva as a company recognizes the value add of that. So, I mean, it's still up to us to kind of build a business case to kind of articulate that. But the value of that is tremendous. And early on, Caliva invested in science, right? I mean, I remember 3 years ago starting out from making hash and rosin, and then, because San Jose was so restrictive in what they allow. But then Caliva made the commitment to buy an HPLC and also GCMS, allowing us to do a lot of cannabinoid testing as well as terpene testing.
Okay.
And, that's still the same equipment that we have back there right now with a bunch of other new toys too, So the ROI on those pieces of equipment is just definitely worth it.
That's awesome.
Do you have a favorite, like, kind of oil to make? Like, because I remember coming in and seeing rosin, and I had just moved to California. I'm like, what is this? And there's all kinds of BHO, crumble, like, you're the scientist behind it. Like, do you have a favorite or a favorite part of the extraction process?
One of the new products that the team's kind of geeking out the most, and I don't want to take credit for the formulation team, right? You got to give it to those guys that are like making it, trying it, focus grouping it, and enjoying it. Rosin is very interesting in the sense where, it's not like distillate, where distillate you remove all of like the characteristic profile of it. Sure, you keep your cannabinoids, but all the terpenes stuff need to be kind of like re-engineered and put
It's
back
not like
into it.
full spectrum anymore.
It's not exactly.
Okay.
So great word, full spectrum, right?
Okay.
So rosin, there's something to be said where we cultivate the material, we process the material, and then we're able to extract the material. Right, and then keep as much fidelity to that plant as possible, and then use that in a formulation. So there's definitely a product type there that a lot of the formulation team is geeking out on. Is a rosin pen that they're developing right now.
Oh,
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I don't think I've ever seen on the market, actually.
Well, hopefully you'll see it soon.
Yeah.
There you go. Heck yeah.
Well, and another cool thing, I mean, this isn't oil, but I was seeing Caliva is about to release the new Reef Leaf flower. So that's kind of cool too. It's, to my understanding, it's premium budlets or kind of thing.
Reef Leaf, like the reception of it's just been super positive, right? I mean,
Cool name too. Like, it just really fits.
Yeah.
You got to give shout out to the product team, right? Mark and Tracy and Nico on that one. We released it on I think 9:00 a.m. on a Saturday, and it sold out before noon.
I remember I came in at like 2:00 or something. They're like, we're all out. I'm like, what the heck? You just texted me.
It was sold out. It's funny. Caliva, our executive team, puts the pressure on all of us to work a lot. So, I was there filling some vapes, and then I see my CEO walk by, Dennis. He comes by and says, dude, did you see the line that's out there?
Wow.
Reef Leaf sold out. And then we were just like, wow, it's only like 12 o'clock.
Yeah. Right.
You just released it today, right? Yeah, it's 12 o'clock. So it's super awesome to see and hear that. Especially, seeing Dennis back there doing trimming, and then, he hears this news and he's just telling people in the trim line. Elated, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a good leader right there.
Well, and it is really cool too to just see like all your hard work really goes noticed, because I felt like that way too when you guys released the Gio cartridges, the pens, and you had the different pods for them. Like, I was one of the ones who came in the first day too, and those were super popular. Like everyone was buying those out. And I like to see too, I've noticed like Caliva's super involved with the community, and I know you guys did like a 420 event, and you've actually sent Austin and I to Outside Lands last year.
Cool.
So we kind of helped with the Instagram and stuff. But do you know of any of that other kind of stuff going on? Like I know you guys have had Leafly here. And
shout out to the branding and marketing team. But he visited, I think it was Los Gatos Terrace.
Okay, cool.
Which is more of a senior home.
Okay.
Doing outreach for
like elderly patients kind of thing.
Elderly patients that are super
smart,
technically minded, right? They're I think in their careers they were like doctors, so they had really great questions, and Sam was really great at being able to answer the questions and being able to kind of, expose a whole new demographic to Caliva and the products that we can that we carry that can help them with their ailments.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, especially because the elderly, they kind of have a preconceived notion, because what they thought of marijuana back in the day is not what it is today. It's not
there's
that
a
stigma.
knowledge gap.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there's a way different questions that you get from them versus your average consumer. So that's cool that he was able to tailor his answers to them.
Totally, right? And just kind of breaking that
stigma.
Because there's been a historic stigma. I just remember, like, even my mom, when I was entering this space, she was like, whoa, what are you doing?
Right.
Are you sure you want to do this? like you got to be careful.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, right.
And Sam said that the turnout was like 100 people.
Wow.
Which was like pretty much the whole community there, I think.
It's kind of refreshing hearing you say that though about your mom and
Yeah.
being like, oh, like be careful. And
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like that is kind of starting to go away, the stigma with working in the industry? Because that's always something I've been worried about. I would love to really just dive into it, but you know, it's crazy. I feel like
Because our
there's
parents
good
are
and
still,
bad, you
yeah.
know?
It definitely is, and you know, going back to this ties into the shout out with the toasties and the raws.
Yeah.
You know, one of the people who had a really strong hand in driving that was Nelson, and you know, I hope he lets me share the story. But he was like, dude, my mom's like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be doing this. That's just crazy. And then he takes her on a tour of Caliva, and she is just blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought you were working in a garage,
Yeah.
like growing cannabis or something.
Mm-hmm.
No. You know, this is all kind of like
It's clean, scientific. All the people are so nice. It's people just
Mm-hmm.
have that preconceived notion still.
They do, and I think this rolls a little bit into like dosing, right?
Mhm.
I mean, historically, you go on YouTube, you can probably find multiple videos of people who have bad highs,
Mhm.
you know, where they've eaten brownie and they're just high
Out of their
like
mind,
3 days
yeah.
out of their mind, you
Mhm.
know.
Or
and
done a gram dab.
Yeah,
exactly
something crazy,
right?
yeah.
And the movement I see in the industry right now is more towards microdosing and smaller dosages.
Mhm.
The value of that is being able to titrate, kind of dose yourself
Mhm.
with a giant brownie that's like 1,000 milligrams.
Mhm.
Right, right.
But if we're able to create single serving sizes in the 5 milligram range or even
Mhm.
the 2.5 milligram range, you can kind of dose and give yourself some time, dose until you reach the point, your target kind of effect state.
Yeah,
right?
because everyone's different.
But you get to know yourself eventually.
Right.
You get to understand your body.
And then
Yeah.
you don't have a bad first experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Exactly, and it's definitely in Caliva's long-term goal to be able to grab a lot of that user data
Mm-hmm.
and then be able to create products that people can, you know, very early on identify as being able to work for them. Like going
Mhm.
back to what Rachel just said, where she said, hey, everybody's different.
Mhm.
Yeah, everyone's biochemistry is going to be different. You know, every strain
It's going to affect you
and-
differently.
differently,
Mhm.
and even the growth of the strain, the phenotype expressions of it's going to be different too.
Mhm.
So how do you create a consistent product for the end consumer
Mhm.
that they can reliably, you know, have a consistent effect state,
Mhm.
right? And one part of that is microdosing, but also on top of that, what's the chemical profile that would be the best fit for you? And now you're getting, you know, there's people in the space that's like, you know, trying to go super techy on it, right?
Mhm.
Like doing everything like a pseudo 23andMe kind of thing with it.
Right, right.
But I think there's a lot of value in the pendulum swinging that way,
Mhm.
and then kind of landing somewhere in the middle where you may not need to know all that machine code information, you know, super myopic level, but be able to kind of like, hey, there's a few buckets of products
Mhm.
that Austin gravitates towards, Ray gravitates towards,
Mhm.
and Mike gravitates towards, right?
Mhm.
That is something that we're heavily working on because we want to create that consistent product for the end consumer, right? If my mom decides to try more cannabis, I would hope that she picks a product that she can feel comfortable with using and know or have a reasonable assumption on what her effect state is going to be.
Right.
And that's one of the things Caliva's always been good at was consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Consistency, transparency, accessibility, all
Mhm.
that definitely. I know that y'all carry this product, but it's called Dosist.
Yeah.
And they're the
Yeah.
pens that have the microdosing, and you can see how much milligrams you're inhaling and all that kind of stuff. I think where they're going is a really nice business plan. I know that y'all are trying to find the terpenes that affect people a certain way, trying to pull that out of every plant and to do it consistently.
Yeah.
So that's something that I love about Caliva, because they're on the pioneer. Y'all are on the forefront doing this, and they're trying to get ahead of everybody and do this with good quality as well. So
No, totally. We consider Dosis one of those awesome colleagues out there, and you know, shout out to Jeremy. People who are identifying issues that are solvable to make the experience more reliable
Mhm.
and consistent, and just more overall positive experience for the end consumer, which is just going to be better for everybody overall. Unfortunately, I gave my mom some cannabis infused lemonade 6 years ago that was not very well made.
Okay.
So she's never going to touch cannabis
Right.
again until I can convince her. But we've grown a long way.
Yeah.
6 years ago, where you have drinks that were cannabis infused, but they had a whole oil layer to it. So now where you have products on the shelf right now that when you actually test it, the potency is actually pretty in line with what the bottle says.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Oh, I bet. I know that a few years ago they would have a certain milligram on the bottle, and you could be getting a heck of a lot less than that or more than that.
Oh yeah.
Which is wild. But yeah, definitely the testing and the new laws. Obviously, it's growing pains. I mean, the business is gonna take more money and more people to get those regulations in place. But all in all, the business is gonna profit from that because y'all are a select few that are ahead of the ball game. In terms of everybody else that's riding the ball, y'all are way ahead of it.
Appreciate you saying that for sure.
Well, it's real. I mean, it's what you're all doing.
That's validation. So executive team here, that's validation that we're spending money on the right reasons.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I know that this is like one of the largest facilities in San Jose, but do you guys, I'm just curious, have plans to have facilities elsewhere? What does it look like for Caliva in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
Ooh, even in the next
You're like
9.
sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next. There's expansion in the next 6 to 12 months.
Awesome.
And
will it be a grow facility, do you know, or will it be more business side?
It's more processing, less on the cultivation side. There's also expansion plans for cultivation, but the one that's closer right now would be the one that I was mentioning earlier, where we're increasing our workforce from 270 to like 300 plus.
Cool.
I have a question for you. So you were asking me about my personal growth. What is your favorite part about growing here?
What I enjoy about Caliva's cultivation team, what they do is that it's such not a siloed off process in the sense where they can walk across and then ping somebody from our labs team to get things tested, and we can get like real-time information to really drive data-driven decision making, right? If you were at another cultivation site that didn't have the ability to do potency testing, microbial testing, those turnaround times may cause you to lose a window of opportunity.
Right. Makes sense.
If towards the end of a harvest, in the crucial 7 days where you can identify optimal harvest,
where the trichomes are changing colors and you're basically deciding when to cut it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. They can snip a little bit of that, get that to our labs team, and then you can get same day or next day results.
Wow.
To really kind of drive the cultivation team to make decisions based on data.
That's awesome.
And we stand on the shoulders of giants in the sense where there's a lot of tribal anecdotal knowledge that's passed on from master growers, but we get to leverage technology to kind of even fine tune that further and leverage those tools to be able to improve processes.
That's amazing. Like you were saying earlier, you kind of have the old school ways mixed with the new school science and technology, and you mix those, and that's a perfect combo.
You're taking a little piece of everyone's game and making it perfect.
Exactly. We stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So
I'm wondering, with your degree, your background, and you did stuff for the Stanford VA and all that, how did you feel going into the cannabis industry? I mean, the job security, obviously with Caliva being 25, that's risky. It's scary for you, obviously your mom too, but for you personally, how did you feel going through that? And where were you at the time that you made that switch to Caliva?
So a great question, right? So Caliva is not my first exposure to cannabis.
Okay.
I co-founded another collective prior to Caliva. When I was making that transition, I was in the Stanford VA doing lab bench work, so got to cut my teeth doing wet chemistry there.
Okay.
And went and worked in the biomedical diagnostics field.
Okay.
So working in R&D both on the machine side and also on the assay side.
Okay.
So I dealt a lot with PhDs, MDs, scientists, like onboarding technology and training their team and staff on new technology for the diagnostic side. But I came into cannabis with a certain amount of bias, right? I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna enter this space and it's just like so wonky. What are the people I'm gonna interact with gonna be like?
Right.
It's risky.
It's risky, but I was so humbled because I met a lot of people that I consider great friends. Head of product from like Biorad. We had physics professors that would come to our collective. They were suffering from cancer, needing palliative care. And it really opened my eyes and really cut those biases out quickly, right? Like, I'm just humbled by the
power of the plant, kind of.
Well, and just the people, like it can help so many people. It's one of the most diverse plants.
100%.
Yeah.
And one of the programs we had during that time, this was during the Wild West days, right? So we had a compassionate care program where, based on ailments you suffered from and your income level, you could qualify for it. We would provide cannabis.
That's awesome.
I remember one person in particular that he greatly appreciated, but he didn't like to take something that he considered a handout. So he would give me weekly guitar lessons.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So every week when he would come in to kind of like pick up his medication, we would spend 30 minutes, and he was a jazz guitarist.
Wow.
Recording jazz
awesome.
guitar. So if Jack's out there, shout out to Jack, right? That was just an awesome experience, and I just like count him as one of my great friends. That experience for me, jumping from a space where, you know, I had a certain amount of arrogance, where I'm like, oh, just a bunch of stoners or like that, jumping in there, but then really being humbled by it. And then when I entered Caliva, I had that viewpoint from both worlds, right? Palliative care is
Essential.
tremendous value with cannabis. Yeah.
Well, and I love too that you say you've met so many people here that are great friends, and I feel like I know a few people now from visiting, you know, that work here, and they just all have such great things to say about it being a family, and everybody's just so like nice and willing to help. And I see all the time you guys like staying and working late, so it's just cool to see that can translate over into the cannabis industry, because like you're saying, a lot of people do have that stigma of, oh, you know, they're just smoking all day, not getting anything done.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that just always stood out to me.
100%, right? And I just want to give a shout out to our chief compliance officer. He's been plugging and chugging, you know, Larry. He's I think he's going on like 30 days straight right now. It just, you know, I mean, July is a crazy month for us, right?
Yeah.
He's out there, you know, running the trimming line, running everything on top of his normal, you know, regular responsibilities. And if anybody was to say that, try to associate that stigma to cannabis users, I would say, hey, visit some of the people in this space right now. Really reconsider what you think.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and so kind of just to close out, like, do you see anything in the next like 6 months, anything that's really standing out for Caliva that, you know, our listeners should know about, anything they should keep an eye out for?
Yes, Caliva's expanding, that's for sure. But on top of that, I have a presentation along with our science team tomorrow to get budget approval for more toys.
Hey,
Cool.
there we go.
Going back with the analogy of Wolfgang Puck or Joel Robshan, you know, only being able to make pizza with, you know, ingredients from Safeway. Now we want to be able to give them the opportunity to have more raw materials, or in this sense, more ingredients to
More
make great products
creativity.
with, more creativity, more tools, you know, to really be able to create, you know, Caliva differential products that you won't get anywhere else.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to turn it 180. I want to ask one more question. Molecularly, because your molecular background, CBD, cannabidiol, at the synaptic cleft, the neurons that fire off, CBD, it helps basically reverse the firing of that neuron. Or can you tell me what's going on there? Because I'm still unsure of like what's happening anatomically down at that level.
Super good question.
I know it's a nerdy question, but
no, it's a great question, and I don't think I'll be able to give it much justice answering it. But to give you kind of like an idea, there's different receptors in the body, right? There's CB1, CB2 receptors. THC binds to certain ones, and CBD binds to other certain ones.
Right.
When they bind, it causes a cascade effect. You know,
Okay.
like neurons firing, you know, channels opening, causing like an action potential. So that's when the nerves fire. You're right. You know, there's so much complexity with it, and most of the evidence right now is very anecdotal.
Okay.
But anecdotal evidence is better than no evidence.
Yeah.
Correct. That's what Chinese medicine exists off that.
Exactly. And you know, I always say this: I don't deify and I don't demonize anything.
Okay.
Right? And cannabis should be viewed, if you use it for therapeutic uses, use it for therapeutic uses, you know? And it may not be for everybody,
right?
You know, but the people that it benefits, it's going to benefit greatly.
Gotcha.
And, you know, you use that as your catch-all. The science of it, it's going to develop heavily over the next 20-30 years.
Can't wait.
I just see the huge influx.
Can't wait, yeah.
Yeah, and then awesome question. I wish I could answer it much better in finer detail. It's going to get dated if I answer.
I understand. Yeah.
But totally, I love that you're an advocate of the science.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, and I also like the old school stuff too. I do old school techniques on my outdoor plants, but I love the science.
That's
all about it.
Awesome. And just to let you know, one of our senior scientists at Caliva, his discipline is botany.
Gotcha.
But
That's
also
so cool.
drug development. Did you guys see that sign somewhere at Caliva where it says nature doesn't do anything?
Yeah, it's
needlessly?
in the actual storefront and inside. Yeah.
So
nature doesn't do anything uselessly.
Yeah.
So everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you say things like Chinese medicine and natural, botanically derived compounds, things exist in nature with its own kind of natural buffer systems. So it's much harder for you to get a super negative reaction. I mean, you touch poison ivy, you're gonna,
right.
And then if you're gonna eat certain plants, you can hurt yourself. But
right.
By and large, for the most part, when plants exist in a natural state, there's like a safety buffer with it to use. The therapeutic parts of it and also the toxic parts of it are really buffered.
You have a big safety window per se.
You do, right?
I mean, the whole reason Chinese medicine exists is because anecdotally it's worked on so many dang people that obviously if it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it. Nobody would be doing it. So that's
kind of the same concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Plants super toxic.
Humans are gonna know and find out
Yeah, and going to go rip it out and make sure nobody else gets hurt from it.
We're making cannabis normalized, not demonized.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there you go. Normalize, not demonize. I like that.
There we go.
Thank you for listening to America's Podcast. If your goal is to be informed on current cannabis news, educated on the newest laws and regulations, at the same time be entertained by your crazy but relatable host, you're in the right place. If you enjoyed the show, please share our passion with others so we can better inform the whole world. We would highly appreciate if you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, and by mentioning us to your family and friends. As always, we love hearing and interacting with you. Please continue to ask us questions and to keep us updated on your cannabis journey. We are here to inform, educate, and entertain the whole cannabis community on Earth. Maybe one day we will branch out to Mars. If you'd like to inquire about advertising with APC, email us at info@americaspodcast.com. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is APC, America's Podcast.